are starkly divided. Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpasses the burden of proof, establishing the elements of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Conversely, others find the evidence fails to meet this standard and does not sufficiently establish the necessary elements of the charges. The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case. I'll be in to see you privately in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your service. Okay.
All rise for the court, please.
Right now, what you're seeing, all have been told to rise by Judge Cannoni after she has declared a mistrial.
I'd like to pick a status date to find out what our next.
As you can see, they are still proceeding in court. But again, Judge Cannoni officially announcing that this is now been declared a mistrial. The jury still told her that there was a deep division due to, quote, sincere adherence to personal convictions. And so now this is where they are. They're still giving the jury in the court any final instructions now, but this has officially been declared a mistrial. She acknowledged that the jury has done pretty much at this point, Cheryl, everything that they could.
That's right, Courtney. And, you know, you can see, obviously, this is very emotional for everyone involved, for Karen Reed and her defense team, but also for John O'Keefe's family. You can see here, I believe that's his mother, seems visibly upset.
The 25th or 26th?
The judge now is giving a status date to come back to court, which I believe is going to be the end of July.
Okay.
Okay, the 22nd
How do I
and
feel?
25th.
You know, I feel that there was significant evidence.
Now, what you're seeing here, Cheryl, as you said, emotions are high. So you're seeing emotions from inside of the courtroom, right? And these are people who have been in court every day for countless days through more than 70 witnesses and more than 600 pieces of evidence. And what you just saw there a few moments ago were some of the people who have been rallying outside of the courtroom. Cheryl, such a juxtaposition of emotions.
For sure. I mean, you know, as we've been talking about for quite some time, I mean, this case is super polarizing. I mean, people strongly believing that Karen Reed did hit John O'Keefe and he later died in the snow. And there are others that believe that this is part of a big conspiracy and a police cover-up and a shoddy investigation, and she's not guilty. So she's just, at this point, the judge is doing what's called housekeeping and giving dates to come back to court for a status hearing.
Thank you. We'll see you then.
All rise.
It looks like that's going to be at the end of July. Now, after a mistrial in these cases, the prosecution has to decide whether or not they will try Karen Reed again and what charges they will bring forth, whether they bring them all again or whether they decide to cull through some of the charges and just proceed with those. But you can see right there, Karen Reed hugging her family, supposedly right there. Very emotional for everybody. These are tough cases. I mean, the jury did the best they could, listening to all of the evidence, trying to come up with a consensus. It has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. It has to be unanimous. And that's a very tall order in a case like this, where there's been just so much information from both sides that's really colored people's opinions on what they think actually happened here.
And this has been, as you said, a very complex case for a jury to have to go through and all come to a unanimous decision, which is why, you know, they have come to the judge more than once to say, hey, we have really tried to consider all of the evidence that has been presented to us, but we are still deeply divided.
Right. And, you know, that's why the judge gave the instruction this morning, which is basically called a dynamite instruction. It's supposed to break the log jam that jurors are feeling when they cannot come to a decision, basically telling them what their responsibility is, you know, advising them to listen to each other and to try to come to a consensus if they're able to without compromising their convictions. And they came back and said that they were not able to do that. So at this point, there's no further need to continue to deliberate, and that she declared the mistrial. Now, at this point, you still have a Boston police officer who was dead. You still have quite a bit of evidence that the Commonwealth has put forward saying that they believe that Karen Reed hit him during a snowstorm. He later was found dead on the front lawn of another Boston police officer. That's the evidence that they put forward. A lot of conflict with that evidence, timing, text messages, some of the evidence put forth with the state police investigators, that people believe that there were conflicts there, that he knew some of the witnesses, the lead investigator, that he made some comments that were derogatory and unprofessional, in the words of the prosecution, as to whether or not any of that gets played into the next trial and how that would unfold at this point. And also, you also have the Karen Reed defense team, who believes strongly that this was a conspiracy and that something else happened to John O'Keefe, that he did go into the home and there was some type of a fight. And I think that they're looking at all of that evidence in a way that they, like you said, saw that there were a lot of conflicts here. And that's part of the problem.
And right now we want to get you right out to WBZ's Penny Commit, who has been covering this case. She joins us live outside of the Dedham courthouse, where we did show you very briefly emotions were running high outside of the courtroom. And Penny, what is it like out there right now? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Absolutely. The judge just actually announcing a mistrial, and I've been out here for 3 months now. I've seen this crowd. I've seen the way they've built over the weeks, and I want to talk to Rita Lombardi. She's one of the leaders of this movement. I know you guys erupted in cheers, but this wasn't the outcome you guys were looking for.
Absolutely not. We were expecting a not guilty verdict. All of the evidence that the defense put on, all of the cross-examination that the defense did with the pathetic, mostly pathetic, prosecution witnesses. Karen Reed did not kill John O'Keefe. It's that simple. She was framed. And we were hopeful that a jury, that was our last hope, that the jury would come back with a unanimous not guilty verdict. But we accept a hung jury, because we know it was either not guilty or a hung jury. Guilty was never an option in this case, because you were never going to get 12 jurors to go along with what the prosecution put forward, with the planting of evidence and all the nonsense. And I hit him. She did not say I hit him.
Well, thanks for your time, Rita.
Yes.
Thanks for talking to us. And guys, a huge eruption out here after that mistrial was declared. Remember, these jurors have been deadlocked. This was several days of deliberation. And I will say this deliberation pretty on par with some other major trials in Massachusetts. It took the jurors several days. The judge sent them back twice, but officially a mistrial declared out here, guys. The atmosphere, I will say, we expected a lot of movement. I think it's a little still. I think people wanted an answer. I think people wanted some sort of closure. And even though it's a mistrial and there is some eruption, I don't know if they got that closure today.
And we're now getting ready to hear from Karen Reed for the first time after this has been declared a mistrial. Let's listen.
Quick reaction.
Yes, quick reaction.
Yeah, they went to the steps.
Happen in court and what will happen going forward. But it looks like here they are walking out among the crowd there. A lot of supporters outside, people on both sides. Emotions running high in a case like this, always, but especially after a mistrial. I think everyone hoping to get some type of resolution. You heard her supporters saying that they believed it was going to be a not guilty. I'm sure John O'Keefe's family and the prosecution believed that they would be getting a guilty verdict today.
Ben, hearing from Rita Lombardi, one of the Karen Reed supporters, you're right. It's a reminder that this case has been declared a mistrial, but it is not over. It is far from over for both sides, for John O'Keefe's family, as well as Karen Reed's family and supporters.
Right, and at this point now, the prosecution has a decision to make. Will they retry her? We don't know what the court calendar is like. We heard the judge set a status date for the case for the end of July. At that time, presumably, or before then, the prosecution will make a decision as to when and how they'll be going forward in the case. A lot still to consider.
Now, for viewers tuning in who are wondering, okay, if we start this process all over again, Cheryl, what could this look like? I know you spoke a little bit about the calendar and seeing, because there has to be time to do this, but what could this whole process look like, considering that a considerable amount of time and money has already been spent?
Well, I mean, the process will continue however the prosecution wishes it to. I mean, they have all the charges to take a look at. They have a second-degree murder charge, which some people felt like it was an overcharge in this case. You know, they have the manslaughter charge. They have leaving the scene after personal injury and death. A lot to consider. And I know that we have one of our experts that we've been using, former Judge Jack Lew, on the line. And Judge, we'd like to get your reaction to what's happened today.
I'm here.
Great. Judge, it's Cheryl Fiandaca. Can you hear us okay?
Hi, Courtney and Cheryl. I can hear and see you. A little bit of a delay.
Great. Okay. So what did you think about the judge's decision to call a mistrial in this case?
I think the judge handled it perfectly. Perfectly. This is a obviously this case may be one of a kind, but the judge I think handled it perfectly.
And so what do you see happening next?
It sounds like the judge set a late July status date. I think there are a couple of different options. So the judge might want to just set a trial date and maybe some interim dates. Or it could be that the defense is going to appeal on the sufficiency of the evidence, or attempt to appeal on the sufficiency of the evidence. The fact that the jury could not agree, that there was a hung jury, increases the chances that that kind of an appeal might be successful. So those are the two. If that second thing happens, it could take a year, 2 years.
So there's still a little bit of time there, Judge, that something more than another trial could happen. There could be an appeal that would have a decision in this case as well.
Yeah, it improves. They can really go up on appeal and say the evidence is insufficient. And the defense here is amazing, of course, and they've shown that they're very aggressive. It's tricky. It is tricky. You're taking calculated risks all day long, representing either side in a case like this. And the defense is taking chances. For one thing, by wanting the mistrial. That's a big tactical and strategic choice.
Why do you think they made that decision?
I think they have, on an issue like this, as you know, the client really makes the decision, because it's a big decision. The little decisions the lawyer can make without even consulting the client. But the big decisions the client makes, so the client must have approved this. Or maybe the lawyer, there is a theory that for most defense lawyers, they'll say something like this: every day that your client is not dragged out of court in chains is a good day in the work of a criminal defense lawyer. So they may think, hey, if they don't, let's take a mistrial and we'll come back on another day. And it cannot be considered as a win for the prosecution.
Now, Judge,
but on the second trial, it's unclear.
Now, Judge Jack Lew, we do want to thank you for your perspective and helping to give our viewers a little bit more of understanding about what could be next. But we do want to take you back out to WBZ's Christina Rex, who also has been covering this trial from day one. Christina. Now, it does appear we're having some technical difficulties here with audio, so we're just going to hang on because we know we are going to come back to Christina. She would have a lot of. Do
you have us now?
There we go. There she is. We can hear Christina. Christina, go ahead. Okay, so right now it does appear that we lost Christina again, but we are going to keep trying because, again, Cheryl, she has been following this case from the very beginning. She's been in the courtroom. She's been outside of the courtroom. She's been following and helping to make this case digestible for everyday viewers. So we will get back to her shortly.
Right, and I'm sure she's gathering information, talking to the families, talking to supporters, talking to the prosecution, talking to the defense team, just getting a perspective from everyone here about what's happened. I think that, you know, part of what when you look at this and how polarizing the case has been, I don't know that there is any real surprise that this has happened. I mean, we saw the jury came back not once but twice saying that they weren't able to make a decision, that they were really struggling with their convictions. The judge issuing what's called the dynamite instruction. It's called Tui Rodriguez also, which basically says to the jury, we need you to make a decision. You have all the evidence that you need. You have all of the information. No other jury could come forward that would have more information to make the decision in this case. And yet they still came back and said, we are still very settled in our convictions and we're not able to come to a unanimous decision.
Now, I do think it was interesting for our viewers as well, Judge Liu bringing up the fact that defense could appeal.
Right. So they can appeal based on what the sufficiency of the evidence, basically saying that this jury could not find that there was enough evidence to convince them beyond a reasonable doubt that she's responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. And at this point, I think we have Christina Rex outside. So let's go back out to the courtroom and see the courthouse and see if we can chat with her.
Yeah, Cheryl and Courtney, hopefully you guys can hear me now. I've been inside that courtroom every day for 10 weeks during the trial when the judge just declared a mistrial in that courtroom. And I've been careful not to, you know, really certainly looked defeated. The judge was somber. Just kind of a heavy air in that courtroom this afternoon when that mistrial was just declared. And then there's really no better way to describe the difference from the course of this trial until today's end result than out here today. Every day, right? It's been beautiful sunny weather. The defense attorneys have been very forthcoming about speaking to the media, even celebrating what they called their wins over the course of this trial. Today, you come outside, it's absolutely downpouring rain, some thunder, and then the defense attorneys came out. Alan Jackson gave a very brief statement, didn't take any questions. David Yannetti also gave a very brief statement. Both of them really, to a degree, calling this a victory on their end and saying the prosecution failed. Different environment out here, and that, you know, we tried to ask Karen Reed how she felt now that this actually isn't over. Over the course of this trial, she's been willing to speak with reporters. I've spoken with her many times outside, and she's said, I just can't wait for this to be over. It's not over. You know, a mistrial is the opposite of this being over. There's already another court date for the end of this month scheduled, and Karen Reed said nothing on her way out of court. We don't know if the O'Keefe family maybe exited privately. They have been very private in not speaking with media folks or really engaging in anything going on outside of this courthouse. And as you know, there has been so much activity outside of this courthouse, so we don't know if they'll be coming out this front door or if they exited privately out the back door. But, you know, you go through a trial that lasts this long and all parties involved, you know, just wanted some kind of resolution. Obviously, they wanted different resolutions, and this really provides no resolution, no closure for anybody here. So we're outside the courthouse now. We're kind of waiting to see what happens, reaction from folks involved in this case, and we're going to bring it all to you as it comes.
WBZ's Christina Rex reporting live outside of the courthouse in Dedham. We do want to just say one quick thing before we get you over to WBZ's Tammy Mutasa. Cheryl and I just looking at this, just coming into our inbox here. We have the Norfolk DA's office officially declaring this a mistrial, but also pointing out that the Commonwealth intends to retry the case. This just coming into our newsroom. But we do want to get you right at the WBZ's Tammy Mutasa, who also joins us live in Dedham right now. Tammy. Okay, we are having some technical difficulties, but we do want to get back to this email here from the Norfolk District Attorney's Office. So it does state that Judge Beverly Cannoni, she set a conference date, which we spoke about, that status update of July 22nd at 2 p.m. And right now we have our producer telling us that we do have some new sound from Karen Read right outside of the courtroom after this announcement. Let's take a listen.
The Commonwealth did their worst. They brought the weight of the state based on spurious charges, based on compromised investigators and compromised witnesses. This is what it, guess what? They failed. They failed miserably, and they'll continue to fail. No matter how long it takes, no matter how long they keep trying, we will stop fighting. We have no quit.
Alan, you're going to stay on?
Go ahead.
I just have two things to say, folks. Number one, I am in awe of the strength and courage of this remarkable client that I've had the privilege of representing since day one. And number two, I want to send a message to all of her supporters out there. Your support was invaluable. We are touched, and we ask for your continued support. I'm not from Texas, like my colleague here. I'm a Boston kid, but I'll repeat what he said, which is, we ain't got no quit.
And what you just heard there, you're hearing from Karen Read's legal team. Now, Cheryl, we have talked a lot about, Rex included, that there's no resolution here. There's no conclusion, but the tone we're hearing there sounds like a celebratory one. You just heard, remember her legal team say, you know, we ain't got no quit, and they're thankful to the supporters.
Right. Right. And, you know, they're saying that they believe that the prosecution failed. So they're considering the mistrial a win for them. Tammy Mutasa is outside of court, our WBZ reporter. She's been covering this quite a bit, too, and she shares what she's learned in this case.
Cheryl and Courtney, we were out here with this big crowd when that mistrial was declared. A lot of mixed emotion, a lot of tension. You can see right behind me, state police are still here barricading this area where a lot of Karen Read supporters have been camping out, have been cheering, have been chanting. We talked to many people today after this mistrial was declared. Some people say they are ecstatic. Other people say they were convinced for a not guilty verdict. But we also talked to supporters for Officer John O'Keefe who have been showing up in the last few days to challenge Karen Read supporters and their behavior, saying, you know, a hung jury is better than a not guilty verdict because Officer John O'Keefe deserved justice and he was the victim in this case. Again, a lot of Karen Read supporters have mixed emotion. You can definitely feel the tension, the anxiety as they've been waiting for days for the verdict to be announced, only for this to end in a mistrial. A lot of people are still here, still chanting, and still want to see what the outcome will be after all of this. But again, a lot of mixed emotions from both camps after this mistrial was declared. For now, live in Dedham, Tammy Mutasa, WBZ News. Back to you guys.
Tammy, thank you. And at this hour, still a lot of questions, still a lot of feelings, still a lot that is unresolved. If you're just tuning in, Judge Beverly Cannoni declaring this a mistrial after the jury was just unable to come to a unanimous decision. She does, you know, thank them for truly trying and truly putting time into deliberation, but they were still deeply divided.
They were deeply divided, and, you know, from basically the get-go. I mean, they had only been deliberating for a very short time when they came out and said that they were having some serious problems coming to some kind of resolution in this case. You know, she instructed them then to go back and continue to deliberate. Let them take she even asked them to take the weekend and said, don't talk about it, don't do anything, just come back fresh and keep an open mind. And even today gave them another instruction, trying to push them a little more. It's a controversial jury instruction too, because there are several states that do not allow what's called the dynamite charge, trying to dislodge a hung jury, because sometimes people believe that by doing that you will feel coerced, like someone who is a lone holdout will feel pressured to make a decision and to go against their convictions. So that's why it's controversial. But in this case, it also didn't work. It didn't move anyone who was, you know, steeped into what their own beliefs and convictions were in this case.
Now, right now, you have seen, we do have a team on the ground that is talking to supporters, giving you a lay of the land. We actually want to let you hear from one of the supporters outside of the courthouse. Let's listen.
How do I feel? You know, I I feel that there was significant evidence by the defense that showed that Karen Reed did not kill John O'Keefe. Karen Reed was framed, pure and simple. Karen Reed was framed. A first grader could tell you Karen Reed was framed. And we have people from the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the military, the two experts that the defense put on, they are utilized by the United States government. And if those credentials and that testimony didn't surpass the testimony of this Mass State Police Paul guy who has an associate's degree in criminology, I mean, give me a break. You know, these experts were from the government. And so we need to learn from this. We need to learn what went wrong. How is it that these 12 jurors could not agree on the scientific evidence that showed Karen Reed did not kill John O'Keefe? And if we have juries, listen, we have learned from this case. We have learned we have serious checks and balances throughout the system that failed in this. And maybe we don't have the checks and balances. We need to get the checks and balances into the system. We need to transform our government, transform our law enforcement, and bring them up to the standards of the private sector. And now I believe that includes the jury too. Because if we have juries who do not understand forensic evidence in the 21st century, they should not be sitting on a trial. So
Now, what you just heard from there, that's Rita Lombardi. She's one of the Karen Reed supporters. Again, you can see emotions still very high. She was very passionate about what she was saying. But Cheryl, we do want to point out, we haven't heard from any of the supporters just yet, those who were there in support of the family, because in recent days, we did notice that they were also there to kind of counter what the Karen Reed supporters were saying. And they, again, out there in recent days. We haven't heard from them yet.
No, we have not heard from them yet. And we haven't heard from, the O'Keefe family, and we haven't heard from the prosecution, other than we did get that email saying that they do plan to retry her.
Now, right now, we do want to get you back out to WBZ's Christina Rex. She is outside of the courthouse in Dedham right now. Christina.
Yeah, Courtney, that statement from the Norfolk County DA's office, which you've read on the air, I would just love to read it again one more time. We didn't even know we'd be hearing from them this quickly. So they said a mistrial has been declared in the matter of Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Judge Beverly Cannoni set a status conference for a date of July 22nd at 2 p.m. in Norfolk Superior Court, this location. First, we want to thank the O'Keefe family for their commitment and dedication to this long process. They maintained sight of the true core of this case to find justice for John O'Keefe. The Commonwealth intends to retry the case. As early as 1 p.m. this afternoon, we were in contact with representatives from the Norfolk County DA's office asking if they've thought about whether or not they plan to retry this case, if they think they're going to be releasing a statement if there is a mistrial declared. And they didn't know, or that we were told that they didn't know yet. So to already have that statement saying not only do we want to thank the O'Keefe family and have a response to the mistrial being declared here, but they do intend to retry this case. It's certainly interesting. And also incredibly interesting is the note from the jury. There's been 3 notes from the jury over the course of deliberations saying that they're deadlocked. This last one saying that they're at an impasse. And those notes signifying that some members were the term, some members of the jury just feel polarizingly opposite about the facts of this case. I spoke with our legal analyst who we talk to all the time about this case, Jennifer Roman, 3 business days ago, I think it was on Thursday, and she said to me she had been worried from the beginning that this could be a hung jury. And I said, why? And she said, well, you go to a dinner party with 10 friends and you bring up this case, and you can have 3 or 4 people who feel one thing, 5 or 6 people who feel another, and who cannot convince each other to feel otherwise. And she said, our jurors are a reflection of our community. This is a jury handpicked from Norfolk County. They live in this area. And she, Jennifer Roman, I'm speaking about our legal analyst, was not surprised at all to hear that they have fundamental disagreements about some of the facts and in this case, and whether or not the Commonwealth had proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. And I said this earlier when I spoke with both of you, but I really can't overstate just how different today feels and honestly the last 5 days of deliberations, but particularly today compared to the rest of this trial. The heaviness in that courtroom was potent. To come outside in the rain, to have no interviews with anyone involved in the case, just quick statements, and everybody rushed out of here. And in that courtroom, the two sides that you were hearing could not have been more different. As the judge said, I'm declaring a mistrial, you heard a sigh in the courtroom, not a sigh of relief, like a sigh. And you saw Mrs. O'Keefe crying, you saw other members of the O'Keefe family crying, and then through the windows outside, you heard cheers. You heard just loud yelling, wooing, which we've been able to hear many times over the course of this whole trial, because the courtroom is right on the corner of the courthouse. So whenever there's been a siren or cheers from the group outside, even though they're past some 200-foot buffer zone, those cheers you can hear inside that courtroom. So to have those two sides happen as a mistrial was declared, just can't really overstate how it was. Cheryl and Courtney?
WBZ's Christina Rex, thank you. And I think that she pointed out two interesting things. One, that we weren't expecting to hear from the DA's office this quickly. And I think that gives good perspective to our viewers who are not necessarily a part of the legal world. Maybe they haven't been following the case this entire time, so they don't know that we weren't necessarily expecting to hear from the DA's office. But also, she's letting us know that how different today feels. The feeling has been such an important part of this storytelling for our viewers.
Well, but I think that's normal. I mean, when you get to the point where a jury is deliberating, that's when it becomes really real. Mm-hmm. I mean, while the testimony is going on, it's part of the process. And now you get to the end of the process, and there's a lot riding on this. You know, her freedom, Karen Reed's freedom is riding on this. Mm-hmm. You know, John O'Keefe's family wants justice, and they believe justice is a guilty verdict in this case. So you can understand the pressure that everybody is feeling. You can also understand the weight of all of that and the responsibility that these jurors feel to come to a decision.
Guys, if you can hear me take our live shot, the O'Keefes are going to leave court.
Now, I do know that we are working on, we are talking to our crew in the field right now. We want to get you back out to the courtroom. We are being told that the O'Keefe family is coming out of court now. So let's just wait a moment. But while we are waiting, this is, again, just a reminder that this is not over. This is not over for the O'Keefe family. It's not over for the Reed family, friends, supporters.
And you can imagine. I mean, this is you saw the emotion. We showed you the video inside the courtroom. The O'Keefe family very emotional about the mistrial. The Karen Reed's family very emotional about the mistrial, and also knowing that there's still another process that they all have to go through again. So no, this is not the end for anyone in this case. You can see them filing down the courthouse stairs right there with family. Difficult day all around. I mean, at the end of the day, someone died here, so it's very sad.
Now we do have Christina Rex.
Cheryl and Courtney, if you can hear me.
Yes.
It's Christina Rex out here, next to the camera right now. We wanted to make sure you could see the O'Keefe family. Clearly, they waited inside to let a little bit of time pass, but some of the people who have been here every day were the ones in the courtroom. That's Paul O'Keefe, John's youngest brother, the only living O'Keefe child in this family now, after John's sister passed of cancer about 10 years ago as well. His wife, Erin, has been here every single day. His mother, John's mother, Peggy O'Keefe, has been here every single day. His father, John O'Keefe, has been here many days. I did not see him with the group here today. Some good friends of his, some cousins, some other relatives have been here every day. Really a pretty emotional moment for them in the courtroom, and then you could just see them there leaving court. It's clearly a sad day for everybody here on all sides.
Absolutely. At this point, you said that the family was very emotional today. Had you seen that type of emotion during the course of the trial at all?
Yeah, so I would say pretty much only from John's mother. John's mother, Peggy O'Keefe, has cried many times over the course of the trial, really mostly silently to herself. She puts her head down and cries during some emotional moments during the trial. His sister-in-law as well, a few moments, and another relative as well. But his brother Paul has really stayed pretty much somber, stone-faced over the course of this whole trial. You haven't seen much of a reaction out of him. He was the first person to testify in this trial, and he did choke up when testifying. I distinctly remember he was asked, how many siblings do you have? And when he was asked that question, he started to choke up because, as I mentioned, he had a sister named Kristen who passed away from cancer about a decade ago, and then he lost his brother John in this incident, of course, 2.5 years ago, and so he's the only living O'Keefe sibling, and when he testified to that, he got choked up in court. Otherwise, you haven't seen too much emotion out of him in the courtroom. This family is really kept to themselves and, you know, incredibly kind and friendly in the hallways of court, but they've made a conscious effort to stay private over the course leading up to this trial and throughout this entire trial. And now who knows if that will change now that there's no verdict.
And you said that there was also a very sharp difference in the way that the defense and Karen Reed has been since the jury started deliberating. You noticed a big change in the way that they've responded with the media and outside the courtroom?
Absolutely. So in particular, there was almost a climax of that relationship on the day of closings, which was Tuesday of last week, if I remember correctly. So after closing arguments, when something changed out here. There were hundreds of more Free Karen Reed supporters outside of the courthouse. Many national media organizations showed up, so the amount of media covering this trial doubled or tripled that day, seemingly out of nowhere. And so that typical kind of exit interview that we did with Karen Reed and her attorneys every day when they walked out of court became wild on that day. There were way more people there than usual, and so as we made our way out of the courthouse, actually, Chris, can we show them where we usually go? Do you mind? So pretty much every day, I'm going to have my photographer Chris show you, we would come down those stairs leaving the courtroom, and Karen Reed's team, they would take a left, so going in the direction to your right, and walk towards their car, which is quite a walk, and we would interview them. That stopped as soon as the jury was deliberating. The mood was more somber, less questions, fewer interviews, very different. And for now, I'm going to send it back to you both.
WBC's Christina Rex live outside of the Dedham Courthouse. Thank you. And we do want to make sure you know, if you're just tuning in, Judge Cannone has declared this a mistrial. We will continue to have coverage for you, so stay with us. But we are going to continue this on CBS News Boston, so on our streaming app.
Right, and as the prosecution has already said that they do plan to retry her, and a judge has set a hearing for late July. So this case will be continuing.
And be sure to stay with us on air and online for updates throughout the day.